everybody. Today we're checking out the Fender Tone Master 59 Bassman. Now in the first portion of the video, I'm going to do a full demo of the Tone Master. I'm going to cover the features and sounds, and the last portion of the video is a comparison with the Fender 59 Bassman LTD, the tube version. The original 1959 Bassman amp is the stuff of legend. It's one of the most used and highly regarded amps in the history of guitar lore and is a prime example of the classic tweed sound. Big and bright clean sounds at lower volume settings, and as you turn it up, transitions through edgy and growling to full distortion that responds to picking hand dynamics and guitar volume settings. It started out as a bass guitar amp. Guitarists loved the tone and volume it could put out and took it over, and it became the template for a lot of other amps, including one in 1963 from a little shop that started in London and was owned by a drummer named Jim. The Tone Master version aims to capture all the mojo of the original in a digital format and offer some flexibility and modern upgrades. Now, if you're familiar with the Tone Master lineup, you know Fender's done a great job representing some of their classic black panel era amps in this format, so I was curious to see how they fared with the venerable 59 Bassman. Okay, so let's start with the obvious stuff. It certainly looks the part. I mean, the tweed, the badges, grill cloth, handle, control panel, knobs, and of course the classic jewel light. Now, just like with the other Tone Master amps, at first glance, it looks like its tube counterpart, aside from the Tone Master badge in the lower corner. The controls look familiar as well. A bright channel and a normal channel, both with a high and low input. Input 2 is decreased by 6 dB. So you got treble, middle, bass presence, and something the tube version doesn't have, reverb. The usual standby switch is now replaced with a mute switch, which will make sense when we look at the additional features on the back panel. Okay, let's check out the normal channel. I'm going to start with the volume at about, looks like about 3.5 there. Okay, here's the bright channel. We're starting at about 4. here's a very cool feature and my favorite sound, both channels blended together using a jumper cable. They're both on about 4. The Tone Master Bassman also sounds great with drive pedals, as you would expect. Here it is with a Keeley Noble Screamer. I'll start with the Noble Screamer bypassed. Compared to the tube version, the back panel is where the biggest differences are, and it's also where it highlights the advantages of the digital format. Now, one of the biggest advantages is the output power selector. So you dial in the tone you like on the top panel and use the output power selector to set the volume level you want. So there's 6 positions labeled 45 watts, 22, 12, 5, 1, and 0.5 watts. Now think of those numbers as relative. So 45 watts is full power like the original tube Bassman, 22 is about half, and every other number there is about half of the previous. This scales down really evenly all the way to bedroom volume. So let's hear it, and I'll play and not change anything except the output volume. Also on the back panel is an XLR line level output with its own volume control. It's got a ground switch and a cabinet simulator that gives you 3 different options. Those are all the Bassman cab but with different mics. Now number 1 is a Shure SM57, obviously can't go wrong there. Number 2 is a Sennheiser 421. Just gives you a little different EQ profile. And number 3 is a blend of an SM57 and a Royer 121 ribbon mic. Classic combination, so you get the bite of the 57 and the extra low end from the 121. Okay, so let's listen to just the direct out, and I'll switch between the 3 IRs. If you're using the direct out and you need total silence from the speakers, the mute switch mutes the power amp and the DI is still active. Also on the back panel is the vintage tight switch. Now, one of the idiosyncrasies of the 59 Bassman is that at higher gain and volume levels, the low end can be a little flubby or kind of loose. The tight setting increases the damping of the virtual power amp that's part of the modeling as opposed to the actual power amp that's driving the speakers. So that tightens up the low end response. Now, this is a great addition sonically because you get the traditional vintage sound and the tighter across the pond sound as well on a switch. The other side of the back panel has an effects loop, which is a perfect addition for this amp. Very cool to be able to add time-based effects after all the tone shaping. Now, next to that is a jack for the included 2-button foot switch. Now, this switches the reverb and effects loop on or off. So I've got a Dunlop Echoplex in the effects loop. Let's check this out. And lastly, on the back panel, there's a USB port and a tiny button for firmware updates. The cabinet is made of pine, so it's nice and lightweight and resonant. And the 4 10-inch speakers are Jensen P10Rs with Alnico magnets, the same speakers used in the tube version, the 59 Bassman LTD. Here I am with the Tone Master Bassman and the Bassman LTD, the tube version. Now, both are brand new out of the box. Tone Master has maybe a couple extra hours playing time on it, so the speakers are a little more broken in. I have an orange amp detonator buffered ABY switcher with identical cables running to each amp. Now, both amps have the same mic setup, and I'm going to set them both the same with a little accounting for tolerances and the pot differences. So the goal is really just to get them sounding as close as possible. I'll play roughly the same thing through both amps. I'll kind of switch back and forth. I know it's not super scientific that way, but it is a fair test to hear what's going on with the two amps. I'm going to do a couple of different tests. I'm going to do cleaner sounds, dirtier sounds, and 2 different guitars. Now, this first guitar I'm going to start with is a Telecaster here, so single coil pickups, and I've got a Heritage H150 that has humbuckers. I've got both amps set to a clean sound right now. The levels are about at 4, and I've got the channels jumped on both of them. And of course, for all these tests on the Tone Master, I've got the attenuator set to full power. Okay, I'll start with the Tone Master. Okay, same settings on the amp. I switched to the Heritage H150. The only thing I had to do was I brought up the level on the Tone Master just ever so slightly, like not even a half number, just to compensate for the level difference. All right, Tone Master first. Let's go for something a little higher gain. The channels are turned up to 8 now. They're still jumped. I turned the bass off on both amps, starting with the Tone Master. Got the same settings that I just used with the Heritage. Now I'm back to the Tele, so we've got a gain sound, but this time I'm going to turn the volume control up and down so we can kind of hear the dynamic sensitivity of both amps. From the player's perspective, I can say that the LTD feels a little bit more responsive and immediate. Now sonically, it's a bit more forward in the mids and a bit fuller sounding, but not really so much in the lower octave. Now the Tone Master has a bit more information in the extreme highs and lows, and the other thing about the Tone Master is that as you turn the volume controls up and down, it feels a little more linear as opposed to the LTD, which feels a little more dynamic. My honest conclusion on the comparison is that these amps fill two different needs. So the Tone Master excels at convenience and versatility, and the LTD is a tube amp, period. I mean, if you're in the market for a tube amp, by all means get one. There's nothing that's the same experience of turning up a tube amp and hearing and feeling all the parts working at the top of their capacity and how they interact and how that affects your playing and your response to the situation. I mean, it's more than just being loud. There's a real nuance to it. And on the flip side, the Tone Master is a great sounding amp. It's responsive and dynamic with plenty of punch and volume, comparable to the tube version. It's lighter weight, ultimately controllable from a volume standpoint, has built-in IRs, XLR out, reverb, and an effects loop. I mean, in my humble opinion, this amp serves a different purpose than its tube counterpart. The Tone Master does the tweed Bassman thing in a convenient, user-friendly package. Thanks for checking out the Fender Tone Master Bassman with me. If you have any questions about this or any other Fender product, make sure to contact your Sweetwater sales engineer or check us out at sweetwater.com. Thanks.